The old clock on the wall showed 8:30 p.m. when Sage Thorne walked into the empty courthouse. Her footsteps echoed in the quiet halls where she had worked as a clerk for over 20 years. She knew every corner of this building, but tonight something felt different. The air was colder, and the shadows seemed darker than usual. Sage wasn't supposed to be here this late, but she couldn't sleep after what happened that morning. It all started with a simple case about a worker named Wesley Milton who hurt his arm at the Harrison Lumber Company. Wesley won his case and was supposed to get money for his injury. But then something strange happened. Judge Raven, who came from the famous Blackwood family that built this courthouse, changed the decision 3 weeks later. She said Wesley was lying and canceled his payment. That should have been the end of it. But on that same day, Wesley's arm suddenly stopped working. The exact same arm he had talked about in court. The doctors couldn't explain it. They ran all kinds of tests but found nothing wrong. It was like magic, but not the good kind. This wasn't the first weird thing Sage had noticed. Last month, old Mrs. Rodriguez lost her house in a court case, but won it back on appeal. A week later, her house burned down mysteriously. And before that, Mr. Chen was found not guilty of stealing from his business partner, after first being declared guilty. The next day, all the money appeared in his partner's account, even though Mr. Chen swore he never touched it. While looking through old files in the dusty record room, Sage found something that made her hands shake. She pulled out a heavy book of court records from 1879. Inside was a newspaper article about Judge Ezra Blackwood, who built this courthouse. On his deathbed, he had said something very strange. In this courthouse, true justice will always win, no matter what any judge says later. Sage dug deeper and found more cases. Every time Judge Raven or any other Blackwood family judge made a decision in room 13, and that decision was later changed, something would happen to make the first decision come true anyway. It was like the courthouse itself was making sure justice was served, even when the law said otherwise. As she was reading, Sage heard voices coming through the old air vents. She recognized them. It was Phoenix, the old janitor, talking to Morgan, who used to be a guard here. "It's happening again," Phoenix whispered, "just like it did with the Rodriguez case and the Chen case and all the others before them. This building knows things, Morgan. It sees the truth, even when people try to hide it." "But why only in room 13, Morgan asked. "And why only with the Blackwood judges?" "There's more to it," Phoenix said, "much more. Did you hear about the new case? The one about the missing children?" Sage's heart stopped. Her daughter Tara was a lawyer who worked on cases involving children. Just then her phone lit up with a message from Tara. "Mom, something scary is happening. Judge Raven gave me a new case today in room 13. It's about 3 kids who disappeared last month, but when I read the case file, I found something impossible. A note describing exactly how the children would disappear, written 2 weeks before they went missing. Mom, I'm scared. The trial starts tomorrow and you won't believe who the suspect is." Before Sage could read the rest of the message, the lights in the record room went out. In the darkness, she heard footsteps coming closer. Someone was walking towards the room, but their shadow in the doorway didn't look quite human. The door handle started to turn slowly. Sage tried to hide behind a shelf, but she bumped into something. A book fell, and old papers scattered across the floor. One caught her eye, a map of the courthouse from 1879. In the dim light from her phone, she saw something that made her gasp. Room 13 wasn't just a courtroom. According to the map, it was built on top of something else. Something the Blackwood family had tried to keep secret for over 100 years. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Sage held her breath. She knew too much now, and someone, or something, knew she was here. But she had to keep digging. Her daughter was now involved in whatever dark secret this courthouse held, and tomorrow's trial would change everything. What Sage didn't know was that the real mystery was much bigger and more dangerous than she could imagine, and it went all the way back to a deal Judge Ezra Blackwood made on the day he died. A deal that wasn't just with justice, but with something much more powerful. The next morning, Sage couldn't focus on her work. The map she found last night was now safely hidden in her desk drawer, but its secret kept spinning in her mind. Below room 13, the old plans showed some kind of chamber marked with strange symbols. When she tried to research what those symbols meant, her computer kept freezing every time she typed them in. Tara arrived at the courthouse early, looking worried. Her long dark hair was messy, and her eyes had dark circles under them. "Mom," she whispered, pulling Sage into an empty office. "You won't believe who they arrested for the missing children case. It's Judge Raven's brother, River Blackwood." Sage felt her heart skip a beat. River Blackwood was the courthouse architect who had supervised all the renovations for the past 10 years. He knew every hidden corner of the building, including what lay beneath room 13. "But that's not the strangest part," Tara continued, her hands shaking as she pulled out some papers. "Look at these blueprints we found in River's office. They show a hidden door in room 13 behind the judge's chair. And these notes," she pointed to some scribbled words in the margin. "They talk about something called the Scales of True Justice, hidden under the courthouse. The same day I found these, 3 more children went missing." Just then, Phoenix the janitor walked by. He stopped when he saw the blueprints, and his face turned white. "You shouldn't have those," he said quietly. "Put them away before she sees them." "Before who sees them?" Tara asked. But Phoenix just shook his head and hurried away, his keys jingling nervously at his belt. Sage noticed something odd. Among his regular keys was an ancient-looking one made of black metal, with the same strange symbol she'd seen on the old map. Later that morning, as room 13 filled up for River Blackwood's trial, Sage watched Judge Raven closely. The judge's face was calm, but her hands kept touching a strange necklace she wore, a small silver scale that seemed to move on its own, even when she sat still. The trial started, but something was wrong. The witnesses who were supposed to testify against River began changing their stories. One by one, they said they couldn't remember what they saw. Even the detective who arrested him suddenly claimed he had made a mistake. Tara looked frustrated. "This isn't right," she whispered to Sage during a break. "Someone's making them change their stories. And look at this." She showed Sage her phone. The screen showed a news article from exactly 1 year ago. 3 different children had gone missing then, too. But they were found 3 days later with no memory of what happened. The judge for that case? Raven Blackwood. And the verdict? Case dismissed due to lack of evidence. As Sage read the article, she noticed something in the background of one of the photos. Behind the rescued children stood River Blackwood, and around his neck was a necklace exactly like the one Judge Raven wore now, a silver scale that seemed to shine with its own light. Suddenly, the lights in the courtroom flickered. A cold wind blew through the room, even though all the windows were closed. Judge Raven's necklace began to glow faintly, and then everyone heard it, the sound of children laughing coming from somewhere beneath the floor. Phoenix appeared at Sage's side. "It's starting," he whispered. "The scales must be balanced, but this time they're using children to do it." Before Sage could ask what he meant, Tara's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "The truth lies in the basement. Tonight at midnight, the scales will be balanced again. Save the children, save the truth. But remember, in this courthouse, every action has a price. Are you ready to pay it?" The message ended with a photo. It showed Judge Ezra Blackwood on his deathbed, holding the same silver scale necklace. Behind him, a group of children stood in a circle, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The photo was dated 1879, but one of the children looked exactly like River Blackwood. During the lunch break, Sage and Tara sneaked down to the basement to look for answers. The air was damp and cold, and their footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. Old case files filled the shelves, covered in dust that no one had disturbed for years. "Look at this," Tara said, pulling out a thick folder. Inside were pictures of children from different years: 1879, 1923, 1956, 1989, and now 2024. Every 33 years, exactly 3 children would disappear for 3 days. They would always come back safe, but with no memory of what happened. And every time, a Blackwood was somehow involved. As they read through the files, they heard someone crying. The sound seemed to come from behind a wall. Tara pressed her ear against the cold stone and gasped. "Mom, there's a room back there, I can hear children's voices." Just then, Phoenix appeared from the shadows. This time, he wasn't trying to stop them. Instead, he held out the black key with the strange symbols. "I've been waiting for someone brave enough to look for the truth," he said. "For 50 years, I've been the keeper of this key. But I'm getting too old, and the children, they need help." He told them a story that chilled them to the bone. The courthouse wasn't just a place of law, it was built to hold something powerful. Judge Ezra Blackwood had made a deal with an ancient force of justice. This force would make sure true justice was served, no matter what humans decided. But it needed energy to work, and that energy came from innocent souls, children's souls. "Every 33 years, Phoenix explained, the scales must be balanced. 3 children are borrowed for 3 days. Their pure souls power the courthouse's justice for another 33 years. That's why the verdicts come true even when they're overturned. The children's energy makes it happen. But this time is different," he continued. "River Blackwood found a way to keep the children longer, to make the courthouse's power stronger. He and Judge Raven plan to use it for something bigger tonight at midnight." Suddenly they heard footsteps above them. Court was back in session, but when they got upstairs, something was very wrong. The courtroom was empty except for Judge Raven and River. The witnesses, lawyers, and everyone else seemed to have disappeared. "Where is everyone?" Tara asked, her voice shaking. Judge Raven smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "They're helping us prepare for tonight," she said. "You see, every 33 years, we only needed 3 children. But times have changed. The world needs more justice than ever. Tonight, we're going to expand the courthouse's power to the whole city." River stepped forward, his silver scale necklace glowing brighter now. "And we'll need more than just 3 children to do it. That's why everyone in the courtroom is now helping us gather more innocent souls." Sage looked out the courthouse window, and her heart stopped. All across town, she could see people walking like zombies, leading children toward the courthouse. Hundreds of children. Tara grabbed the black key from Phoenix and ran toward the judge's chair. "We have to stop this!" she yelled. But before she could reach the hidden door, River raised his hand. Tara froze in place, unable to move. "You don't understand," River said softly. "This is true justice. No more guilty people going free. No more innocent people being punished. The courthouse will make everything right." But Phoenix wasn't finished with his story. "Tell them the rest," he demanded. "Tell them what happens to the children's souls after 33 years. Tell them what really happened to you, River Blackwood." River's face changed, and for a moment he looked exactly like the child in the 1879 photograph. Judge Raven's necklace began to shake violently. The floor under room 13 started to crack, and a deep rumbling sound filled the building. The truth was about to come out, and it was worse than anyone could have imagined. Phoenix's voice echoed through room 13. "River Blackwood isn't Judge Raven's brother. He's her great-grandfather's first victim. The child in that old photo didn't just look like River. It was him. He's been trapped in the courthouse for over 100 years, never aging, never dying." River's face twisted with pain as the truth came out. "The children don't just power the courthouse for 33 years, he said quietly. They become part of it forever. I was the first. Judge Ezra Blackwood took me and 2 other children in 1879. He promised we'd help make the world fair. But he never said we'd have to stay here forever, watching generation after generation of Blackwoods use more children to keep their power." Sage looked at all the empty seats in the courtroom where people had been sitting just minutes ago. "Where did you send them?" she demanded. "Where are they taking the children?" Judge Raven walked to the center of the room, her scale necklace pulsing with a dark light. "To the chamber of scales beneath us. You see, every person who enters room 13 becomes connected to its power. I can use them whenever I need them, just like my family has done for generations." Suddenly, Tara broke free from whatever was holding her still. She ran to the window and gasped. The streets were full of people walking like sleepwalkers, leading children toward the courthouse. Some children were crying, others looked confused, but none could break free from the adult's grip. "But why?" Tara asked. Why do you need so many children tonight?" River laughed, but it was a sad laugh. "Because the power is fading. Each generation of children's souls lasts a little less time. The courthouse needs more energy to keep working. That's why Judge Raven convinced me to help her. She promised if we gathered enough children tonight, she'd finally set me free." Just then, the black key in Tara's hand began to glow. Phoenix stepped forward, looking younger and stronger with each step. "What Raven didn't tell you, River, is what really powers the courthouse. It's not just the children's innocence, it's their time. Every child trapped here gives up their future years. That's why you've lived so long. You're stealing their lives." The floor cracked wider, and through the gap they could see a huge chamber below. Hundreds of floating lights filled the space, each one a child's soul trapped in time. In the center stood a massive set of scales made of black metal, covered in the same strange symbols from the map. Judge Raven's smile grew wider. "Midnight is almost here. Soon all the children in town will join our collection. The courthouse will have enough power to last forever, dealing out true justice across the entire country." But River's face had changed. He looked at his hands that had remained young for over a century, while other children grew old and died. "All these years," he whispered, "I thought we were helping justice, but we're just thieves, stealing children's lives to power some ancient machine." Tara quickly typed something on her phone and showed it to Sage. It was a text from Morgan, the old bailiff. "The symbols on the key aren't just decoration, they're names, the names of every child taken since 1879. If someone speaks them all at midnight, the courthouse's power will break." Phoenix nodded. "That's why I kept the key all these years, waiting for the right moment. But be careful. If we break the courthouse's power, everything it ever did will be undone. Every verdict it enforced, every justice it served. And every life it stole," Tara added, looking at River. The clock began to strike midnight. Judge Raven raised her hands, and the walls of room 13 started to glow. Outside, the hypnotized adults were reaching the courthouse steps with their young captives. They had only moments to make a choice. Let the courthouse continue its dark version of justice, or stop it and face the consequences of undoing over a century of supernatural verdicts. What they didn't know was that somewhere in the chamber of scales, among all those floating lights, 3 children from the past were about to change everything. They had been waiting 144 years for this moment, and they had a secret of their own, one that would make everyone question what true justice really means. As the clock struck midnight, a strange light filled room 13. Through the cracked floor, 3 glowing shapes floated up from the chamber of scales. They took the form of children dressed in old-fashioned clothes from 1879. Everyone in the room froze as the ghost children spoke. "We are the first 3, they said together. River wasn't the only one Judge Ezra Blackwood took that year. We were the others. But something went wrong with us. Instead of staying young like River, we stayed as spirits, watching everything the Blackwoods did." The ghost in the middle stepped forward. She had long braids and a torn dress. "My name is Sarah," she said. "The symbols on the key aren't just names, they're a story. The true story of what happened the night Judge Ezra Blackwood died." The second ghost, a small boy with a cap, joined her. "I'm Thomas. Judge Blackwood didn't make a deal with justice that night. He made a deal with something else, something darker. It promised him power over true justice, but it tricked him." The third ghost, a tall girl in a school uniform, finished the story. "And I'm Mary. The deal wasn't supposed to use children. It was supposed to use the guilty souls of condemned prisoners. But Ezra Blackwood was too proud to use dirty souls for his perfect justice system. He thought innocent children's souls would make it work better." Judge Raven's face had turned white. "No," she whispered. "That's not what our family history says. We're helping justice." But River walked over to the 3 ghosts, tears running down his face. "They're telling the truth. I remember now. The night Ezra took us, he wasn't trying to serve justice. He was trying to cheat it. He wanted to control it, to make it work the way he thought it should." Outside, the hypnotized adults had reached the courthouse doors with their children. The building began to shake as hundreds of feet climbed the steps. Tara looked at the black key in her hand, then at her mother. "If we read these names, We'll break the courthouse's power. But what about all the guilty people it caught? What about all the true verdicts it enforced? Sarah floated closer. True justice doesn't need magic or stolen souls. It needs brave people who fight for what's right, even when it's hard. Suddenly, Judge Raven grabbed the key from Tara's hand. "I won't let you destroy my family's legacy," she screamed. But as soon as she touched the key, something strange happened. The scales on her necklace began to crack. "The scales!" Phoenix shouted. "They're connected to the key. Quick, someone has to wear both at once to break the power." River understood what he had to do. He grabbed the key from Raven and put it against his necklace. A blinding light filled the room. The floor split open completely, showing the chamber of scales below. Hundreds of trapped souls swirled around the giant black scales like a storm of light. But there was something else in the chamber that nobody had noticed before, a figure chained to the base of the scales. It was transparent like a ghost, but darker, more scary. As everyone watched, it began to move, breaking free from its chains. "Oh no," Sarah whispered. "That's what Judge Blackwood really made his deal with. And now, after 144 years, it's finally getting what it wanted." The dark figure rose up, taking the shape of Judge Ezra Blackwood himself, but his eyes were completely black. When he spoke, his voice shook the whole building. "Finally, the power of all these souls, all this stolen time. It was never about justice, it was about breaking the rules of life and death themselves." The ghost children backed away in fear. "We were wrong," Thomas said. "Breaking the courthouse's power won't just undo its verdicts. It's going to—" Before he could finish, every window in room 13 shattered. The hypnotized people outside began to scream. And in the chamber of scales, the trapped souls started to pulse with a darkness that no one had ever seen before. The dark spirit of Judge Ezra floated above them all, growing larger with each passing second. The trapped souls in the chamber of scales started turning black, their innocent light being corrupted by his power. Every child's soul he touched became a small copy of himself, with the same black eyes and evil smile. "For 144 years I've been feeding on these souls," Ezra's spirit laughed. "The courthouse's justice was just a cover story. Every overturned verdict that came true, every supernatural judgment, it was all to make people believe in the power of justice. But really, each act of justice made these souls a little darker, a little more corrupt. And now I have enough dark power to bring back every evil person who was ever judged in this courthouse." River fell to his knees, still holding the key against his necklace. "All these years, I thought I was helping justice, but I was just helping him build an army of darkness." Tara grabbed her mother's hand. "The notebook," she said suddenly. "Mom, remember the notebook you found in the records room? The one with the list of every case from room 13? Sage's eyes went wide. She pulled the old notebook from her bag. "Look at the pattern," she said, flipping through the pages. "Every time the courthouse enforced justice after an overturned verdict, someone died or was hurt or lost everything. It wasn't justice at all, it was revenge." The three ghost children, Sarah, Thomas, and Mary, formed a circle around River. "There's still hope," Sarah said. "River isn't just the first child taken. He's the key that connects everything. He's been here the longest, watching the darkness grow." Thomas pointed to River's necklace. "The scales don't just measure justice, they measure time itself. All those years River didn't age. They're stored in there. Years stolen from him, and from every child after him." Mary touched the black key in River's hand. "And these names, they're not just for breaking the power. They're a spell of reversal. If we use River's stolen time along with the names—" But before she could finish, Judge Raven grabbed Sage's arms. "Don't listen to them," she screamed. Her eyes had turned black like her great-grandfather's. "Think of all the guilty people who'll go free if you stop this. Think of all the wrong verdicts that will stay wrong." Phoenix stepped forward, looking younger with each step. "That's what Ezra wants you to think. But look outside." Through the broken windows they could see the hypnotized adults had changed. Instead of bringing children to the courthouse, they were now dragging convicted criminals, murderers, thieves, and worse, out of their prisons and toward the building. "He's gathering everyone who was ever judged here," Phoenix explained. Once midnight finishes striking, he'll use the corrupted souls of the children to bring back every evil person as part of his dark army. The clock was still striking midnight. Time had slowed down around them, making each bell toll last longer than it should. They were only on the 6th strike. 6 more to go. Suddenly, Tara noticed something in her mother's notebook. Wait, look at these dates. The courthouse didn't just take children every 33 years. It took them whenever a truly innocent person was wrongly convicted in room 13. The children's souls were trying to balance out the injustice, but Ezra's darkness corrupted their sacrifice. The ghost children nodded. Now you understand, they said together. But there's something else you need to know about River. He's not just the first child taken. He's also... Before they could finish, the spirit of Judge Ezra roared with laughter. The chamber of scales erupted with dark energy, and all the corrupted souls began to swirl around him like a tornado. The 7th bell started to toll. What the ghost children were about to reveal about River would change everything, but were they already too late to stop Judge Ezra's real plan? As the 7th bell echoed through the courthouse, Sarah's ghost floated close to River and whispered something that made everyone freeze. River isn't just the first child Ezra took. He's Ezra's own son. The room went silent. Even Judge Ezra's dark spirit stopped laughing. River stared at his hands, memories flooding back after 144 years. I remember now, he said softly. Father was obsessed with justice after Mother died in that robbery. The killer was found not guilty because of a legal mistake. That's when Father started looking for ways to control justice itself. But he needed a pure soul to start the power, Thomas added, and what soul could be purer than his own innocent child? Mary pointed at Judge Raven. That's why your family could control the courthouse's power. You all carry River's blood. He's your true ancestor, not Ezra. Judge Raven backed away, her black eyes flickering back to normal for a moment. No. That's impossible. We're not. The 8th bell rang. Suddenly, the notebook in Sage's hands began to glow. Hidden words appeared on its pages, written in Judge Ezra's handwriting. My beloved son River, forgive me. The darkness promised me justice, but it lied. It doesn't want to punish the guilty, it wants to use them. Every evil person judged in room 13 has left a trace of their darkness here. Once all 12 bells ring, their darkness will join with the corrupted souls of the children, and true evil will have the power to judge the world. The 9th bell rang. Tara looked out the window. The hypnotized people were now breaking into prisons, releasing more criminals. But something else was happening too. Ghostly shapes were rising from old graves in the cemetery behind the courthouse. The spirits of every person who had died because of the courthouse's supernatural verdicts were coming back. The scales, Phoenix shouted. Look at the big scales in the chamber. Everyone watched as the giant black scales began to move. On one side, thousands of bright lights, all the innocent souls of the children. On the other side, a growing mass of darkness, the evil of every criminal judged in room 13. The darkness was getting heavier. The 10th bell rang. River stood up, tears running down his face. I understand now. Father didn't just steal my life, he stole my choice. The power of these scales doesn't come from justice or evil. It comes from choice. Every child taken lost their chance to choose their own path in life. That's the true crime here. The ghost children joined hands around River. There's only one way to stop this, Sarah said. River has to make the choice he was never allowed to make. But the price. The 11th bell rang. Judge Ezra's spirit howled, No, he's my son. His soul belongs to me. He dove toward River, but something stopped him. The black key and silver scales River held had created a shield of light around him. I was never yours, River said firmly. A true father would never sacrifice his child for power, and a true judge would never steal children's souls for revenge. He turned to Sage and Tara. Quick, the notebook. There's one more secret in it. On the last page there's a list of names, not the children's names, but the names of everyone who was wrongly convicted in room 13. If you read them Before he could finish, Judge Raven lunged at the notebook. At the same time, The dark army of criminals reached the courthouse steps. The corrupted souls in the chamber swirled faster and faster, and deep below, in the very foundation of the courthouse, something ancient began to wake up. Something that had been waiting since before the courthouse was even built. The 12th bell began to ring, but this time it sounded different. This wasn't just the last bell of midnight. This was the bell that would decide everything: justice or revenge, light or darkness, life or death. And in that moment, River remembered one last thing about the day his father took him. Something that could change everything. If only he had time to tell them before the bell finished ringing. The 12th bell's deep sound shook the courthouse as River suddenly shouted, "The courthouse wasn't built on empty ground. This place used to be an ancient meeting place where people came for true justice. Not the kind written in law books, but the kind that comes from wisdom and mercy." The floor of room 13 cracked completely open, revealing not just the chamber of scales, but something deeper, a circle of glowing stones buried beneath the foundation. Each stone had a face carved into it, worn smooth by time, but still watching, still judging. "The circle of true judgment," Phoenix gasped, looking younger than ever. "I've been searching for it my whole life. Ezra Blackwood didn't just build his courthouse here by accident. He built it here to steal the circle's power." The ghost children spread out around River. "Now you know the whole truth," Sarah said. "These stones have been fighting Ezra's dark power all along. Every time an innocent person was convicted, the stones tried to make it right. They used the children's souls to fix wrong judgments. But Ezra's evil kept corrupting their work." The 12th bell was still ringing. Its sound stretched out impossibly long, as if time itself was waiting for what would happen next. Tara grabbed the notebook from Judge Raven's hands and ran to her mother. Together they found the last page. But what they saw made them gasp. The list wasn't just names. Each name had a small note next to it. James Wilson, convicted of murder, his daughter grew up alone. Mary Chen, convicted of theft, her son lost his home. Marcus Taylor, convicted of fraud, his family starved. These aren't just wrongly convicted people, Sage realized. These are all the parents of the children who disappeared every 33 years. Ezra didn't just take random children. He took the children of the people his courthouse wrongly convicted. River's face filled with pain and understanding. "That's why I was the first. Father convicted an innocent man of killing mother, but he knew he was wrong. He took me first to start the power, then he took the children of other innocent people he convicted. He thought he was balancing the scales, making up for his wrong judgments by using their children to enforce true justice. But Judge Ezra's dark spirit just laughed. "You fools! Those stones aren't fighting my power. They're feeding it. Every soul taken, every judgment enforced, every bit of revenge taken in the name of justice. It all made the darkness stronger. And now, the army of criminals and dark spirits had reached room 13. They poured through the windows and doors, surrounding everyone. The corrupted souls of children swirled faster and faster around the giant scales, which were now tipping completely toward darkness. Judge Raven fell to her knees, the blackness leaving her eyes. "What have our family done?" she whispered. "All these generations we thought we were serving justice." Suddenly, River's necklace and the black key began to pulse with a new kind of light. The carved faces on the ancient stones started to glow brighter. And deep beneath everything, a voice as old as justice itself began to speak. "The circle of true judgment has waited long enough," it said. "The choice must be made now. But remember, true justice cannot come from revenge, or power, or even from trying to fix past wrongs. True justice can only come from—" Before the voice could finish, Judge Ezra's spirit let out a roar that shattered every remaining window in the courthouse. The dark army surged forward. And in that moment, River remembered the last thing his mother had told him before she died. Words that would reveal the only way to save everyone, but at a terrible price. The 12th bell was still ringing its impossible note when River spoke his mother's last words. "True justice lives in forgiveness, not revenge." As soon as he said these words, the carved faces on the ancient stones began to cry tears of light. Each tear floated up through the chamber, touching the corrupted souls and making them shine again. That's what Mother knew, River said, his voice growing stronger. That's why the killer was found not guilty. She had forgiven him on her deathbed, and the circle of true judgment honored her choice. But Father couldn't accept it. He chose revenge and called it justice. The ghost children joined hands around River. Now we understand too, they said together. Every child taken, every soul trapped here. We were all connected to someone who chose forgiveness over revenge. That's why our souls had the power to make the verdicts come true. Tara flipped through the notebook frantically. Look, every wrongly convicted person in here, they all forgave the people who accused them. Even from prison, they chose mercy over hatred. Judge Ezra's spirit howled in rage. No, forgiveness is weakness. Justice must be harsh. He commanded his dark army to attack, but something strange happened. As each criminal and dark spirit came close to the circle of ancient stones, they began to remember. Memories filled the air like floating pictures. A mother forgiving her son's killer, a man pardoning someone who stole everything from him, a child hugging the person who had hurt their family. Each memory glowed with a power that made the darkness shrink back. But Judge Ezra wasn't finished. You can't erase all the wrongs with forgiveness, he screamed. What about the pain? What about the loss? His spirit grew larger, feeding on his own anger and need for revenge. That's when Judge Raven stood up, tears running down her face. I forgive you, River, she said. And I forgive you too, Ezra. Our family has carried this darkness for too long, hurting innocent people because we couldn't accept that true justice is about healing, not hurting. The black key in River's hand suddenly turned gold, and the scale necklace began to shine with pure light. Phoenix stepped forward, young again, his age restored by the power of the circle. The key never needed all those names to break the power, he said. It just needed one word: forgiveness. River looked at the dark spirit of his father, holding out the glowing key and necklace. I forgive you, Father, he said softly. And I forgive myself for being part of this for so long. Judge Ezra's spirit began to change. The darkness cracked, showing glimpses of light inside. But then he laughed. A different laugh, more desperate than evil. You don't understand. If you break this power, if you free all these souls, there's a price. Everything the courthouse's magic has done will be undone. Every supernatural verdict will be reversed. And River, you'll... Before he could finish, the carved faces on the ancient stones spoke as one. The choice is yours, River. You can keep the power going, keep living forever, keep trying to force justice through magic and fear. Or you can end it all knowing that... Suddenly, Tara noticed something in her mother's notebook that made her gasp. On the very last page, in the smallest writing, was a note about River's mother's case. What it said would change everything they thought they knew about that night, about justice and about the true power of forgiveness. Sage read the final note in the notebook aloud. Case 1879-001, murder of Eleanor Blackwood. Victim's last statement, hidden from court records. I was not murdered. I chose to leave this world to save my son. The darkness was coming for River, but a mother's sacrifice can change destiny. Ezra, my love, if you're reading this, our son lives in forgiveness, not in revenge. Let him choose his own path. The 12th bell finally finished its endless ring. The sound echoed through time itself as River understood the truth. Mother didn't die from a robbery, he whispered. She gave her life to protect me from the darkness Father was calling into this world. She was the first true sacrifice, not me. The ghost children floated closer to River. That's why the courthouse's power worked through children, Sarah said. It wasn't just about innocent souls. It was about sacrifice and love, just like your mother's. Judge Ezra's spirit began to shrink, the darkness falling away like broken glass. Eleanor, he called out, his voice no longer full of evil but full of pain. All these years, I thought justice would bring you back to me, but you were trying to save our son from what I'd become. The dark army around them started to fade. The corrupted souls in the chamber of scales turned bright again, each one glowing with forgiveness instead of revenge. The ancient stones pulsed with a warm light that filled every corner of the courthouse. River looked at his hands. They were starting to fade too. "If we break this power," he said, "everything will go back to how it should be. All the souls will be free. All the wrongs will be made right. But I'll have to go back to my own time, live the life I was supposed to live, and die when I was supposed to die." Tara grabbed her mother's hand. "But that means all the people who were punished by the courthouse's magic. They'll be free too. Even the guilty ones." The carved faces spoke again. "True justice cannot come from magic or revenge. It must come from the hearts of people who choose to forgive, to heal, to make things right with love instead of hatred." Judge Raven stepped forward, the last of the darkness leaving her eyes. "Then we'll do it the right way," she said. "No more supernatural verdicts. No more stolen souls, just people working together for real justice." Phoenix smiled, now looking exactly as he did when he first became the courthouse's keeper. "The circle of true judgment will remain," he said, "not to enforce justice, but to remind us what it really means." River held up the golden key and the glowing scale. "I choose to end this," he said, "for Mother, for all the children taken, for everyone hurt by false justice." He looked at Judge Ezra's fading spirit. "I love you, Father, and I forgive you." As River pushed the key into the scale's lock, a final memory filled the air. Eleanor Blackwood holding baby River, singing him a lullaby about love being stronger than any law. The courthouse filled with the purest light anyone had ever seen. When the light faded, everything had changed. The chamber of scales was empty, its dark magic gone. All the trapped souls had been freed. The ancient stones still glowed softly, but now they shone with hope instead of judgment. River was gone, back to his own time to live the life he should have had. Judge Raven found herself changed too. The next day, she started working to free all the wrongly convicted people. Tara and Sage helped her, using the notebook to find every case that needed to be made right. Phoenix stayed as the courthouse keeper, but now he told people the true story of River Blackwood and his mother's love. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun hits the courthouse windows just right, people say you can see a young boy playing on the steps while his mother watches with a smile. Not as ghosts trapped by dark magic, but as memories of love that chose forgiveness over revenge, memories that remind us all what justice really means. In the end, the carved faces on the ancient stones kept their promise. True justice didn't need magic or revenge. It lived in the choices people made every day to forgive, to heal, and to love. The courthouse still stood, but now it was a place where mercy balanced judgment, and where every verdict came from human hearts instead of supernatural power. And in room 13, where it all began, they hung a small plaque with Eleanor Blackwood's hidden words, "True justice lives in forgiveness, not revenge." Below it, in River's handwriting from 1879, were added the words, "And love is the greatest justice of all."